Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I just got the thumbs up to get started here. One of the benefits I found with the early morning session, waking up this morning, I was treated to an absolutely gorgeous sunrise. It's hard to imagine being at an event where there's a more beautiful venue, so I hope everyone's enjoying the Gold Coast. I'm David Hood. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Mimecast. You can probably tell by my accent that I'm not from Australia. My colleague, Ali O'Hare, she's the Director of Customer Engagement. She threatened to subtitle me during the presentation, so hopefully that won't be necessary. Our session today, how to reduce the risks to email in Office 365. We're going to go through some statistics, hopefully bring up some things for you to think about as you think about maybe moving to Office 365. And then I'm going to hand off to Ali. She's going to do a demo of Mimecast, so hopefully it's going to be a good session. So first off, I love this image of emus that are migrating, thousands and thousands of emus that are migrating. And when you think about it, we're in a situation now where lots of organizations around the globe are trading in their on-premises technology and they're moving into cloud or SaaS-based technologies. And over the last 10 years, we've seen some of the most successful businesses provide SaaS solutions, the Salesforces, the Workdays, and Office 365 as well. And when you look at some of the numbers, it's pretty amazing to see the adoption of Office 365. And I'm sure that as we participate in the conference for the rest of the days, you'll see some huge numbers. But I did want to just kind of set context and provide some numbers so that we're all sort of on the same page in terms of the adoption. The first number up there, 85 million, that's the number of corporate active monthly users on Office 365 right now. That was the number that Microsoft said in their last earnings session in November. Absolutely huge number. It's growing 40% year over year. And so if you think about it, by November next year, there should be about 120 million active users on Office 365. Obviously, just a huge number. 50,000. That's the number of customers that adopt Office 365 on a monthly basis. Every month, 50,000 organizations are moving into Office 365. Last June, when Microsoft talked about that number, that was true for 28 straight months. Huge, huge number of folks that are moving into Office 365. The last number there, 78%, that was a number that Gartner found. They did a 2016 survey, and they found that 78% of organizations are using Office 365 or planning to use Office 365 in the next 6 months. So obviously, we're here at Ignite. We love Microsoft technologies. We're using Microsoft technologies on a daily basis. But one of the things that I wanted to double click on is looking at Office 365. It's a huge suite of services, right? You've got Exchange Online, you've got OneDrive for Business, Skype for Business, massive, massive suite of interconnected services. But when you look at the number one reason why companies are moving to Office 365, they're doing it because of email. And again, this is from the Gartner survey that I just talked about. But if you look at it, they asked folks to rank which workloads they're moving to Office 365 for. Exchange Online is number one at 70%, far and away the most popular. As you look down, OneDrive for Business at 50%, then Office Pro Plus, and then further on, you have Yammer there. Usually when I get up and talk, I ask how many people are using Yammer, and I don't see too many hands that are going up. Mimecast recently completed a global survey that looked at not just Office 365 and email usage, but how important email was to organizations around the globe. So this was a global survey, had respondents in the US, in Australia, in the UK, and also South Africa. And we wanted to really drill down into how companies are using email and how companies are thinking about running on-premises or cloud email. And one of the things that we found is that email is still absolutely the dominant channel in all kinds of companies for communicating internally and externally. We found that 98% of the respondents are using email. And I like to joke that 2% must be lying about it, right? I mean, email is without question the one thing that we're all connected to. I hope I'm not the only one that every night before I go to bed, I'm checking email, and as I wake up in the morning, I'm looking at my email as well. It absolutely is the dominant form of business communication. But we also wanted to drill into how critical email was to an organization. And we found that 88%, almost 90%, view email as critical. And 55% of those organizations view email as mission critical to their organization. So you have to make sure that you're mitigating the risks of email. To give you an idea of the number of corporate emails that are being swapped on a daily basis, sent and received, there are about 112 billion corporate emails that are sent every day. So one of the things that I wanted to check on, and we're going to look at maybe some of the questions and important things to think about depending on what state you're at, but just wanted to get a feel for the audience. How many people are still running Exchange on premises? All right, great. So a fair number, some of our folks are. How many people are 100% in Office 365? Anybody out there 100%? Terrific. And how many people are a mix of the two? How many hybrids do we have out there? All right, great. I appreciate you guys letting me know, because I think there are some key things to think about as we go forward. So one of the things that our survey wanted to do is look at not just Office 365 adoption, but really look at Exchange Online adoption and be able to check how many organizations around the globe were using just the Exchange Online piece. And what we found is about 60% of companies are already using Exchange Online. So that's a pretty good number that are using it. What we also found is that almost 95% are either using it or planning to use it in the next 2 years. So obviously just a huge number of folks that are thinking about using Exchange Online and will be using Exchange Online. But one of the things that our survey found is that it's not just that everybody is pushing all their chips into the cloud. So we found that for organizations that are using Exchange Online, we found that about 70% of the employees at the company are using Exchange Online, with about 30% still using some kind of on-premise. So they're operating in a hybrid environment. And we also asked the question for the companies that were planning to use Office 365. And very interesting, I think, found that also about 70% of companies that were planning to use Office 365 will have about 70% of their employees in Exchange Online. So interesting symmetry there between the companies that are already using it and the companies that are planning to use it in the future. That's the email, yeah, sorry, the email piece.
So that includes Office 365 for your group you're talking about?
Absolutely, yep, absolutely, sure. So what are some of the key questions that you need to think about when you're in an on-premise environment and thinking about Office 365? There are a number of good questions. The first is, are there certain employees that you may want to keep in an on-premise environment versus moving up into Office 365? When we did our survey, we found that data privacy is still one of the main things that folks do want to think about as they think about taking certain employees into the cloud. So that's an issue. Also, what migration strategy will you take to move over? It's either a stage migration into Office 365 or a cutover migration into Office 365. A cutover is obviously a little more risky as you move all the mailboxes over, say, a weekend. And one of the things that we found in our survey is that Australia as a region was more likely to do a cutover type migration than the rest of the world, which is interesting. I don't know whether it's a risk-seeking group in Australia, but that was one of the things that we found. Some of the other things to think about are, what are you going to do with the legacy email that's at your organization that contains all those valuable corporate records? What mail servers are you currently using? We found in our survey that 2013 and 2016 were by far and away the most popular platforms around the globe. But if you are on an earlier version and can't do that upgrade straight into Office 365, you need to think about what your migration path is going forward. Similarly, there are some things to think about if you already are on Office 365. First, can the users manage the security settings themselves? As an admin group, we want to make sure that we can offload those tasks as much as possible to the employees and let them serve themselves. Also, are the expected SLAs being met as a group for your company? Are emails being delivered and sent, and what happens if there is a disruption to your business? How does the IT department respond in the event that there is some kind of disruption to email? Do you have a plan in place to make sure that it can continue? What other workloads are you thinking about rolling out? Gartner recommends that as you think about Office 365, don't do it as a one-shot deal. Deploy email, say, and then work backwards and deploy other workloads as you go forward. Also, in hybrid environments, there can be unique challenges. Does your organization have complex routing rules that you need to use and deploy? That's something to think about. Does hybrid impact your e-discovery? If you have some employees that are running on-premise and some that are running in the cloud, can you respond if there is a litigation request to make sure that you can run one search to find that information? And also, how long will you be in a hybrid environment? For those people that put their hand up earlier, are you running your hybrid environment for a couple of months? Are you planning on running your hybrid environment for a longer period of time? So whether you're on-premise, in Office 365, in a hybrid environment, you've always thought about your email environment and surrounded it with a number of different technologies: security, potentially archiving, disaster recovery if you had it. And there are a number of third-party tools for Office 365 to improve it and make sure that it's providing you all the necessary solutions that you have. And I just want to mention a few of them. In terms of migration, Office 365 and Microsoft, they've invested a lot in the Fast Track program, and our research found that about 60% of companies that move over to Office 365 are using Fast Track. We also found that about 40% are using MSPs and the channel to help move themselves over into Office 365. And about 20% are using migration tools like Archive 360, Skykick, BitTitan to help them make that move from on-premise technology into the cloud. Another category of third-party solutions is monitoring. So for the folks that use Office 365, you're familiar with the admin console. And typically, if everything's running great, you're seeing all green there. That's fantastic. But if something is going wrong, many companies want to use a performance monitoring solution to help give them insight into what's happening. Security, obviously, when you move to the cloud, is a big issue. So whether it's a CASB or additional email security, you want to make sure that you have what you need in terms of security to make sure that your move to the cloud is good. And then the last would be around identity management and making sure that users can authenticate well. So there are some risks to an email environment that I do want to just cover off and hit on. And the first is around security. And that obviously is a big issue. Whether you're on-premise, in the cloud, or in a hybrid environment, the risks to email are absolutely real. And I have a few examples from the past year that are Australian examples that I just want to walk through. The first is the Brisbane City Council. They lost about $500,000 to an impersonation attack. Are folks familiar with impersonation attacks? That's when you get spoofed. And that impersonation attack was a spear phishing email that went to the accounts payable department. And what they did is they got somebody in the accounts payable department to change the payment terms to one of their normal providers. Ultimately, a wire transfer went out. It was to a fraudulent account, and it led to almost a $500,000 loss. Then the other attack that I wanted to mention was on the Melbourne Hospital. And this was an attack that went into the pathology department. They got a virus. And ultimately, it meant that the pathology department couldn't use their systems. They had to process specimens manually. And obviously, they weren't able to provide the patient care that they were used to providing. That reminds me a lot, actually, of ransomware attacks that we saw in the States on a couple of different hospitals. MedStar Health was one. Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital was another. Ransomware attacks targeting companies and organizations that provide that key infrastructure, that's a huge, huge risk. We've also seen attacks on municipal train lines in San Francisco. And I also heard about a ransomware attack that attacked a hotel. Their guests were locked out of their rooms, right? And there's a huge incentive then for the provider obviously pay the ransom. So it doesn't matter what environment you're running from a security perspective. The risks to email absolutely do remain, and they don't change. But one of the things that is a little unique to Office 365 is something that my colleague, J. Peter Berzizi, who's a Microsoft MVP, talks about. And he uses the term vault recreation. So I'm going to describe the situation as he describes it. But is everyone familiar with the Ocean's 11 movie, where Danny Ocean and his band of thieves were going to attack the Bellagio vault, right? And they built this very elaborate recreation of the Bellagio vault so they could do some practice. And they stuffed that little guy in, and he was in the cart, and they pushed him in, and then he did a great backflip out and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, they were successful. But it's similar in a way that you can do this, and we've seen cases where attackers will do this with Office 365. And what they can do is they have an easy way to get themselves a tenant, and once they have this tenant, they have control of the admin console, they have control of an inbox, right? And now they can test and they can try out different kinds of attacks. Office 365 is protected by a single layer of security, whether you're running EOP or EOP plus ATP. And then once the attackers have tried this and successfully gotten it past the defenses, then they broaden their attack and can spread out. And so I think that's one of the things that you should think about. The next thing that I want to talk about is data assurance. And when you were in an on-premise environment, you likely had some kind of backup for your system, whether it was tape on-prem, obviously a long time ago, or some kind of system that was either on-prem or in the cloud. With Office 365 and cloud collaboration technologies, what's your new on-site solution to making sure that you can back up if something does go wrong? Because I would argue that these three risks of human error, malicious intent, and technical failure still apply whether you're running an on-premise environment or whether you're running in an Office 365 environment. And it's not to say that one of these things can't go wrong, but if you're an administrator and you want to retain data for 5 years, say, but you mistakenly set it to 2 years, in year 3, that data is gone. And it's not the SaaS service solution provider's fault if that data is gone. And that's true if it's Office 365, Salesforce, Workday, any of the big providers. With this audience, I promise I'd mention this next one in a whisper. But we had an incident where in the United States, Office 365 did have a mail disruption. It happened on the last day of the month, the last day of the quarter, June 30th. And it was due to an EOP infrastructure upgrade. And that upgrade meant that the throughput processing of Office 365 was delayed. The event lasted from about 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time till about 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I saw cases where companies had 200,000 emails that were queued up at the gateway. So if something like this does happen, you as an organization need to think about, in the event that email is disrupted and flow is disrupted, how can we recover? How can we continue working and keep employees productive? So I would just say, think about how you can plan for potential problems. Think about how you can make sure your company has the necessary security involved. Think about if something does go wrong, and usually with technology, we've all been in the business long enough to know that with technology, something probably will go wrong. How can you recover? So just a few numbers about Mimecast. We now have about 25,000 customers around the globe. We just announced earnings last week, so I wasn't able to update this slide in time. We have about 4,500 customers that are using Mimecast plus Office 365 together to make email safer for business. We have major offices in the United States, London, South Africa, and Australia, and we have customers in about 150 countries around the globe. Our major solution areas are in 3 buckets to provide security and cyber resilience for Exchange on-premise and Office 365. The suite of products, targeted threat protection, which provides URL attachment impersonation protection, and now internal email protection. So if you have a malicious insider, if you have a compromised insider, then we'll protect that email that's going outbound to make sure that there aren't threats that are attached to that. For data archiving, we offer an independent data archiving, which includes e-discovery and key access for employees to that data. And business continuity, email continuity, if there is a disruption, will allow your employees to keep sending and receiving email to stay productive. And with that, I want to turn it over to Allie.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So my name is Alison O'Hare. I'm the Customer Engagement Director at Mimecast. And really following on from what Dave has been speaking about, more at a kind of theoretical and high-level point of view, I wanted to go more into the technology and give you a bit of a deep dive into what we do and how we do it. And really, it's not about Office 365 because that's a great product. It's more about having that approach of defense in depth, layers, making sure that you have a backup plan or mitigating any risks. So let's take a bit of a deeper look. Firstly, just to position how Mimecast fits in. So customers will come to us with any kind of environment. Often it's hybrid, Office 365, on-premise Exchange, but really we're mail server agnostic, so it doesn't really matter what environment they have. With Mimecast, cloud-based technology and full admin control. So even though cloud-based, we want to make sure that you have the visibility, granularity that people would enjoy from any kind of on-premise gateway solution. In terms of what customers will do once they come on board, it's all about sending emails outbound and inbound. So outbound from Office 365, for example, we then can layer on some of the security and gateway functionality. From an outbound perspective, it's things like TLS, enforced TLS, disclaimers and branding, data leak prevention. These are just some of the key controls that customers will set up. Customers will point their MX records to Mimecast. We then deliver onto their environment, whether it's Office 365 hybrid, we have intelligent routing policies, so we can be very flexible at how we deliver those emails inbound. Now, traditionally, from a gateway perspective, in the good old days, and I've been with Mimecast for 9 years, but initially it was all about anti-spam and antivirus, so making sure that you had signatures, reputation policies, scanning in place to prevent those typical types of attacks. But obviously, over the years, anyone in IT, including myself, has seen things evolve a lot in terms of the way that the target threat approach is more the norm. So we've layered on the target threat protection, which I'll talk through in quite a bit of detail during this presentation. Anything that's bad, though, we'll obviously reject in protocol before it's delivered on into the customer's environment or into Office 365. So about 90% of all inbound traffic to our customers is actually rejected before it goes in. We also look at the potential for junk mail, I guess bacon mail, so using heuristics to figure out whether it's something that the end user might want, but not right now. So you can use things like whole queue management and digests to allow those users to retain their productivity and manage those queues. Anything that's good is delivered into the customer's environment. And like I said, it's all about that layered approach because all different technologies will use different ways of updating and different ways of, I guess, mitigating those risks or those threats. The other thing to take into consideration is going to be your continuity and your archiving. So the way we approach archiving is at a gateway level, we're actually capturing all external emails. So everything that's going outbound and inbound, if a customer comes on board for archiving, we'll capture those emails. And the benefit of this is we also capture the transmission data. So you can always go back, you can troubleshoot, you have all the kind of chains of custody to exactly how that email was delivered. And I'll show you a little about this when we get to the demo as well. For any internal emails, we're obviously taking advantage of a journal to push those into the archive. And then for historical data, we're using an ingestion. So a lot of customers will engage with us either prior to migration, it could be during the migration process. And one of the things that they'll focus on is, do we push all data into Office 365, or do we take a subset of data or the older historic data or the leavers data and actually then migrate that straight to Mimecast and take a slimmer mailbox into Office 365? So making that migration process a little more streamlined. So from an archiving point of view, we offer perpetual archiving. It's all stored at 256-bit AES encryption at rest. Our data centers are based in Australia, and we have 2 data centers which are geographically dispersed to provide 100% service level uptime. The other thing about the architecture, it allows for near real-time search speeds. So because we're storing the data in triplicate in a grid architecture, administrators and users can enjoy very fast search speeds. And also for us, it's not just about archiving data, it's about making it useful. So e-discovery, lots of other collaboration tools as well, which I'll talk through. The other big aspect, and something that a lot of IT administrators bring up, is the ability for the IT team to focus on projects. So they say that typical day is overrun with end-user queries, help desk calls about, I need to access data, what happened to this email, why am I getting this spam, should I click on this? So it's really for us about the end-user tools as well. So in terms of productivity tools, we have an Outlook plugin, a webmail portal, and a series of mobile apps for Android, iPhones, iPads. I mentioned BlackBerry just in case. So that's really how it fits into the customer's environment. And different customers will come onto different product sets, but it's all about mitigating that risk. So if continuity was the theme for your environment, any of these tools can also be used to continue to work in the event of an outage. So I just want to drill in a little bit into the security aspect because it really seems like that's the conversation of the day. Most people who come to us, even though the conversation might end up in more of an archiving or a holistic email management conversation, it starts off primarily with, we're getting a lot of threats through. We don't know what to do. We have CryptoLocker. We've tried various options. We've tried content policies, but it's just not working for us, and we really want to drill into the security controls. As I mentioned earlier, in the good old days, it was enough to have a good gateway, and a security stack and gateway is essential. Even now, you need to have those security checks, those reputation checks, the heuristic scanning, all of those is essential at a gateway. But what happens now is it's really that second stage that initiates the threat. So although these attacks start as being email-borne, it's not the email that's the issue. It's the user interaction that then contacts the web. So really the threat is coming from the web, but it's email-borne. So for us as a vendor, it's all about putting checks and putting protection in place so that when that user does interact with that email, or if they're going to interact with that email, that you've got something set up to protect your environment against that click or that opening of the attachment. So we talk about targeted threat protection, and that really has three main aspects to it, although 2 days ago we launched one more, which I couldn't really put in the slides. But the first is URL Protect. So we talk about phishing in the good old days, and that was really a blanket email, say from pretending to be Chase Bank saying update your details. They were quite, they were quite blasé in the way they did it. It was easy to see that they weren't legitimate emails. And also they weren't targeted. So you'd have a Chase email going globally, whereas a lot of people say in Australia don't use Chase Bank, so it's not really relevant. But now we all know that it's Ozpost and it's Energy Australia, and it's much more those that will actually get an end user to interact. So what we do here is we rewrite that URL, and when the user clicks, we're doing real-time protection. And I'll show you more about that as we go as well. The next aspect is going to be Attachment Protect, and that's about the sandboxing of emails. So that, and I remember years ago when people said, does Mimecast do sandboxing? And we were adamant that sandboxing is going to slow down and causes latency. It's not necessary if you have a good gateway. But the reality is that these cyber criminals are so good at hiding their identity and making it look like the reputation is good, the content is good. They can match exactly the legitimate email. And with the attachment, it's really not the attachment that's the problem. It's obviously that second stage once the user interacts with it, which is why we do sandboxing. And then finally, Impersonation Protect, and that's all dealing with whaling attempts. You can call it CEO fraud. In the US, they see a lot more in terms of, the end of financial year and stuff like that. Here, it's still very much around wire transfers. But this is all about looking at the criteria of those emails and trying to find a way that you can say, look, this is potentially a whaling email, proceed with caution. How does that work? So with Impersonation Protect, we spend a lot of time analyzing these whaling attacks because at a gateway, there's nothing wrong. It comes from a domain that's got a good reputation. There's nothing weird about the content. But there are some indicators that if you add these all up, you can determine to be potentially malicious. Those indicators are things like keywords, like make a wire transfer, are you at your desk, when you have time, are you there? And these keywords are weighted. You've got things like the display name. Because we can sync with our customer's Active Directory, we can look at the email and see if the display name of the sender matches anything internally. We look at the domain proximity. So that's how similar is the sending domain to your domain. So is it 1 or 2 characters different, but still to the user, it looks like it's the same domain. We look at domain activity, so how many emails have been sent from that domain, because anyone who stands up a domain for an attack, there's obviously not going to be a lot of legitimate traffic going through it. And then we look at the reply to address. And we take a consolidation of a couple of these, and it's really based on what the customer has seen. We kind of match up to a similar definition. And then you have a couple of actions that you can invoke based on meeting these certain criteria. This is an example that came through to us as an organization. Peter Campbell is our CFO. Peter Fondini is our financial director. And what happened was, you can see if you look at the domain, I think, that it's an R and an N instead of an M. So in this example, it's really easy to look at those indicators and detect that it is, in fact, a whaling attempt. You've got the proximity of the domain, you've got very little traffic on that domain, it's coming from a user that's based internally, and you've got the word wire transfer. So already you have enough criteria to trigger what we call an impersonation attack. Now, there are a couple of options of what you can do. You can hold that email, you can reject that email. We normally recommend that you tag that email. And you can actually change that content or customize that content as well. But if you train your users to look out for this and explain what it's all about, they can then see this email, they see suspicious message in the subject, and they know that potentially it could be a malicious email. So the next thing to kind of cover is your URL protect, and as I mentioned, this is all about preventing spear phishing attacks. What we do is we rewrite that URL. So any point in time that the user clicks on that URL, we then do some background checks. So a deep web page analysis on that landing page. So in that way, a lot of these cyber criminals, when they actually launch the attack, there's nothing wrong with the website at that time. So even if you're doing URL database checking at a gateway, which we do, you often can't pick it up because it's not a known threat. There's nothing wrong with that web page at the time of being processed. It's only at a later stage that they then stand up something with malicious content. So when the user clicks, we then do the analysis. We're looking at categories associated with the web page. We're looking at the URL. We're looking at the HTML components. We're looking if a dangerous attachment type is launched. And then we determine if the website is good or bad. If bad, we block access to that web page. If good, we seamlessly redirect. But one of the other things we've coupled is the dynamic user awareness. And this is all about, I think, a lot of email administrators understand the fact that although you can have many layers of technology, so you can have your layered approach from an email point of view, you've got your end user protection, you've got your web proxy protection. But over and above that, with the way the kind of target threats are moving, keeping on top of that is difficult. Future-proofing is difficult. So you also have to make sure that your end users can be that human firewall. So what's kind of unique to Mimecast is we developed this dynamic user awareness, where a percentage of clicks, you can force the user to have this pop-up page that says, are you sure you want to go to this web page? Is this a trusted person? And you can then decide as a user, actually, it's not something I want to go to, or yes, this is good, allow me through. Now, it's only a percentage, so it won't become irritating or something they'll just ignore. It's all designed to wrap around into your end user awareness campaign. And all of this is dashboarded. So from an admin perspective, you can see exactly which of the users are more susceptible to these threats, which of the users are even failing the awareness campaign and getting it wrong. And then finally, attachment protect, which is the sandboxing. So once again, uniquely to Mimecast, we give you two options because we understand that end users work differently, right? Some of them want that email right now. They don't want any latency, and sandboxing is always going to introduce a degree of latency. For other organizations, they want it to be as seamless to the end user as possible. So with the preemptive sandboxing, it means that everything is sandboxed. So as it comes through into Mimecast, if it has the relevant office-style attachments, we'll then sandbox that attachment. Now, what's happening in the sandbox is we're really emulating an end user's workstation or environment. And that's why there's the latency. Because you can't just open the attachment. It's not that simple because they're using various ways of evading those technologies. So you have to change the clock, you have to change the CPU usage, you have to open and close programs. So for that application or that malicious code, they don't understand or don't know that it isn't an actual user workstation. If we find that there's something malicious about that attachment, we'll block it before it gets delivered to the end user. But the other way is going to be that on-demand, which is the transcription. What this does is it means that it converts it into a read-only PDF, so it's always safe because obviously nothing can happen. If the user opens that PDF or they want to edit that document, they can then request it to be sandboxed. So from a user perspective, it's a slightly different way of working with these attachments, but it means that if they just want to read it, they get it straight away, and if they do want to edit it, they can then sandbox it. The other option, of course, is just to block macros altogether. And some customers will use a policy on Mimecast as well, just to stop macros being delivered full stop. So what I'm going to do now is, we've talked a lot. I'm just going to go and have a look and swap things over here. And I just want to demo some of this technology. Does anyone have any questions before I kind of go through the technical aspect of the demo? No? Perfect. So you'll obviously be familiar with this view. It's obviously Outlook. What you'll see over here is there is a ribbon, a Mimecast ribbon. And I spoke earlier about the end user tools. So really about extending the functionality that we've covered, your security, your archiving, and your continuity concepts, but to the end user. For a lot of our customers, they'll roll out this plugin, and it really gives these advantages to them, like you can keep a higher performance slim mailbox, but you can allow your user to be self-sufficient and productive. So the first thing I want to show you is, we've spoken a lot about the end user URL rewrites. This is an example. You guys might be familiar with the AGL example. If I hover over the link, you'll see it's been rewritten. Now, one of the things that does concern IT administrators is you might train your users to look and hover over to see where it's going. Obviously, now it's going to Mimecast. But what you can also do is you can append the destination domain on that URL rewrite so that your user understands that they are actually going to this specific domain. If a user clicks, in the background, we're obviously doing our checks. We're looking at the web page. We're doing that deep website analogy. And then we come up with either a block or it goes directly through. Now, as a customer, you can customize this. So you can brand it yourself with logos. And one of the things we're working on is also the ability to change the text. So it really can become the customer's own. So this is the web page that they would get if they're blocked. The other aspect of this is going to be your dynamic user awareness. So if I click on this link, what it's going to be doing is giving me that reminder that potentially this could be a dangerous email, and I need to think through whether it is or not. So you can see, once again, that I can either just accept the risk and continue. If I do and it's dodgy, obviously it'll block me, but it will put me in a naughty bucket, which can be visible on the dashboard. So as an administrator, you know which users are kind of falling for which threats. If I go back into the Outlook plugin, I just want to show you some of the other functionality. If you look here, this is an email. I was going camping, which was a fantastic trip. But one of the things to note is the transcription method. So I mentioned in part of sandboxing, you got the two on-demand or preemptive. If you went for the on-demand, you can see that it's rewritten this into a read-only PDF. If I click on it, it gives me the email. But if I wanted to request that, say I wanted to edit that document, for example, I can then request it from Mimecast, and it'll then send the attachment to the sandbox. So that's the other option. And like I said, it's really dependent on your environment and your end users. A lot of our customers will go for preemptive, or they'll use a mix. So depending on what department the end user works in, will determine which method they'll use. So from a security standpoint, we also offer what's called a digest. I bring this up because a lot of the IT administrators I talk to really want to drive that user productivity. So this is just a means to be able to manage their quarantine mailbox. You don't have to use this. You can tailor it. You can take out these links as well. But it just gives you a means to have end users drive their own personal kind of whitelists and blacklists from within here. So if I look at the Mimecast ribbon, as I mentioned, you've got these controls. You can also extend the gateway controls, and it's all about how email savvy your users are. So if you wanted to, you can give the ability to report spam, to view their on hold. So once again, extending that productivity tool to the users. But for a lot of our customers who install the Outlook plugin, it's mostly around continuity and archiving. So with the archiving, you have a much slimmer mailbox, but you make sure that your users can freely delete emails if they want to. They can folder things, and all of that is replicated into the cloud. So not only do we host that read-only perpetual archive, but you can also replicate that folder structure. So if you have the types of users that are dragging emails into folders, and that's the way that they work by browsing through, you can maintain that structure in the cloud. So if you look over here, if I was that type of user, which I'm not, I'm just a big bulk searcher, but if I was, you can scroll down, and you can see here that in my demo folder, there were just 6 emails, but in my cloud archive, you can see obviously there are a lot more because we have more of a restrictive policy within our Exchange and Office 365 environments. So it just means that you have that bottomless archive replicated. But what if I wanted to do a search? We do have an easy kind of one-year search, but also you can be much more granular. So I'm just going to search for an email. I've been at Mimecast, as I mentioned, for 9 years, so I'm trying to find something that goes back a bit from a colleague of mine, Jan. I'm just going to go back all time. Like I said, I could select a folder or a particular document, and we are indexing both emails, content, subjects, and attachments as well. When I hit search, this is looking at my personal mailbox. So it's nobody else's information. This is as an end user going through the search process. Once I get those emails, just say I want to go to this particular one over here. When I click on it, it's obviously going to load that content. But the great thing here is I can continue to work with this email. So if I click reply, it doesn't matter that this email no longer exists in my environment. I can still reply to Jan, and it'll go through the kind of normal channels of being delivered. If I wanted to, I can also save this email. So I could export it, I could save it back into my environment if I wanted to work with it, I can print it, and I also have a lot of security controls about marking it as spam, etc. The other great thing about the archive is collaboration, and I've talked about this quite a lot. But you'll see here that not only do I have my own archive account, but I also have a delegate mailbox. So as an administrator with sufficient privileges, you can allow users to access another person's mailbox. And that means if someone is on leave or someone leaves the organization or there's like a group mailbox or something, you can give people access to be able to search that archive as well. The other thing that you can do is called smart tags. Smart tags is, for me, a real key, and a lot of our archiving customers use it because you have the ability to share information to someone who's not involved in that conversation. People may use it to watch users. If someone is deemed to be potentially sending out malicious content, you can go ahead and you can create a smart tag and share that information with, say, HR. Or if you had a compliance team that wanted to see all emails that matched a certain topic or confidential nature, you can create a smart tag and give them permissions to view it. So if we move on from archiving, the other thing is continuity. Now, no cloud service is immune to an outage. Mimecast as an organization knows that, and everything we do is around DR, failover, active configuration, providing that experience to our customers. Dave mentioned outages with Office 365, and it's always going to happen, and that's why we can't have 100% uptime SLAs in Office 365. What I've done here is I've simulated an outage. So normally in a real live example, this wouldn't be how it would happen. What would happen is mail server would go down, customer or administrator would get a notification, and coming soon we have a dashboard where you can launch your continuity event, etc. What happens for the end users, they can seamlessly continue to work. So in this scenario, mail server is down. I don't really care. I want to go for a coffee with a mate of mine. So I'm going to send an email. And if I send this email, although it's going to be bypassing my Exchange environment, it still picks up all the policies from Mimecast. So even though there's an outage, I can continue to work, and we're still applying all the same policies. Once the mail server is back up, we resync all the information, and then we dedupe. So everything ends up back in the Exchange Office 365 environment, but from a user's perspective, it doesn't mean that everything is duplicated. Same deal, yeah. So we pull those down through Mimecast, yeah. So if I go into my Gmail account now, you'll see there's my email. It's already come through. A lot of people, the concern with an outage is going to be reputation, financial loss, and the productivity. So those are probably your three main business aspects of it. From a reputation or productivity point of view, all good. I can continue to work. You see policies are applied. And this also shows us an example of what you can do with the stationery. So a lot of our customers just enjoy, I guess, the stationery component as part of that gateway. So the ability to do legal disclaimers, you can do branding, but you can also do a business card. So using that link to Active Directory to push those AD attributes as well. But as I mentioned earlier, the key is that all the policies are still applied, so security, delivery, etc. Now, the other thing to mention from a user perspective is you've got the Outlook plugin, you've got the mobile apps, but you've also got a webmail portal. So we try to give options depending on the environment and depending on the users. I won't go into detail, but basically it replicates the Outlook plugin. So the ability to search, the ability to compose an email in the event of an outage, the ability to look at that folder structure, so browse through those folders to find a particular email. So all of that replicated for the end user. And there are multiple ways of authenticating with Mimecast as well. So we support ADFS integration, we've got SAML, we've got AD Sync if you wanted to just do a direct password through or a local password. So that's also catered for, as well as controlling what permissions end user will have to the end user tools. So what I'm going to do now is swapping over from the end user experience but to the admin controls. And a lot of people who we speak to are concerned about the granularity, the visibility, and the control within the administration console. So from an admin perspective, can you go and make the changes, see what's going on with your users, troubleshoot email delivery, view reports from one single interface? So I'll just quickly cruise around and show you some of these options within the time that we have. So firstly, you'll see here this is the dashboard. It gives you kind of a snapshot of your environment. You can drill into more detail if you wanted to by kind of highlighting a specific point in time. But it really is just meant to show you what's going on at kind of an initial view. One of the things that we believe is key in terms of administration console is going to be your role-based access control. So being able to control what your administrators can do, but also being able to give someone in a legal team, a compliance team, the ability to, say, view the archive, but have access to nothing else. So we have some canned administration roles, but you can also create your own. And a couple of those that are worth mentioning is going to be things like your basic admin, your help desk admin, which gives the ability to track and trace, view policies, and things like that. We also have what's called a super administrator account. The value of this is being able to not just view the headers, but to view the content, and not just being able to run an archive search, but export data as well, or give permission to a delegate mailbox. But this is key to me in that you can really control exactly what an administrator can do. And then you can also view exactly what those administrators are doing because we have audit logs, search logs, message view logs as well. So from an auditing and accounting point of view, everything is tracked and those logs are immutable. So you can always get back to them no matter what. I just want to drill down into some of the modules that we have. So starting with Gateway, and we've talked about Gateway at length in terms of security controls and policies, but I just want to touch on policies because I think this is quite a big strength in terms of our gateway and security stack. When a customer comes on board, they start off with the default best practice set. Now, some of our customers will come from being with a certain vendor for, say, 10 years. When the reality comes to mapping over those policies, they actually end up leaving a lot of them behind because they say, this has grown over time, I have no idea why this stuff was added. So what we'll do is we just start off with your best practice and we'll tweak those. So we have certain policies we put in place like anti-spoofing, attachment controls, you've got all your targeted threat policies, the way we deliver emails, opportunistic TLS, SPF checks. So all of those are configured, but then we also go through a process with our customers to work through those. I'll just highlight one of the policies that we have and show you how they work. But really it's about taking your from and to variables into consideration and deciding how that email should be delivered. So allowing for complete granularity. This policy is attachment link on size, and basically it allows a sender to link an attachment instead of delivering it to the recipient. So if the recipient had more restrictive size limitations for attachments in place, it will allow you to actually change that attachment at a Mimecast gateway level, convert it into a link, and then when the recipient accesses it, they can just download it directly to their environment. But really, the crux of this is around the variables. So for any policy, you can say from the least specific to the most specific, and we'll apply accordingly. But you can use an individuals, you can use an address group, so local or Active Directory, you can use an email domain, and you can have multiple policies depending on what the outcomes are. So one policy I did want to show you is what we discussed earlier, which is the anti-whaling. And I think it's worthwhile just highlighting it because it's quite a difficult concept just to talk through. So if I go down to Impersonation Protect, and it is a little overwhelming at first because there are so many policies. But I'll just show you kind of our Mimecast policy for Impersonation Protect. So we talked earlier about those criteria. What we do is we analyze with the customer what they've seen before. So what are they typically getting? Is it coming from a free mail domain, or is it a domain that's looking similar to theirs? We look at the traffic, etc. And then we'll create a number of hits. If we see this, what is the action going to be? And typically, customers will tag this, and you can customize that text as well. So with Mimecast, you create your definition, and then you create how you want that definition to be applied. It doesn't have to apply to all users, as I mentioned earlier. So moving on from policies is really about troubleshooting and visibility. So with Mimecast, everything that we process is logged. And once again, I think this is key because as an administrator, you might be one of those types of administrators that actually wants to see everything and what's happening. So for example, what emails is Mimecast rejecting? Like, what is hitting the gateway that we're rejecting based on a virus signature or grey listing or invalid recipient? So you'll get these logs. But over and above that, that's not useful if you just want to troubleshoot a particular email. So a user phones in, just say it's Alison. She's always moaning about something to do with her emails. And she says, okay, I sent an email about a very important coffee date. The recipient never got it. It's got to be something to do with IT. It always is. So I can use this screen over here, and I can just plug in the information I've been provided, and we'll then search across all of the queues and views for both successful and unsuccessful emails. So you'll see it's quite a common theme with me about coffee dates. But if I click on one of these, this just kind of shows the depth in terms of the fact that it's the gateway coupled with the archive, etc. Now, because I don't have content viewing rights, and that's also key because typically you won't want your administrator to see the content of emails. What I can see is I can see the header information, but I can also drill down into the transmission data. So this is basically looking at that SMTP conversation between Mimecast and that next hop. And this can be really valuable when you're trying to prove delivery either to an end user or say it's another IT administrator who's saying, look, we never received that email, it's your system, etc. You can then go and look at the header information, you can look at this transmission data, and you can see this is the remote greeting, but more importantly, this is the receipt acknowledgement. So we know that the email was delivered to the next hop at this particular date and time. And you can even go as far as looking at things like what policies were applied if you were trying to troubleshoot that, or reporting these emails to our messaging security team. Now, our messaging security team is a global team, and we obviously have a presence in Australia, as with everything. So our support and our customer experience or success teams are also based here in Australia. So, like I said, the troubleshooting email delivery is key because you can really, whether it's a successful or unsuccessful email, drill into exactly what happened to that email and then remedy the situation, tell the sender, look, you're on RBL, you can whitelist that sender if you want to work around an RBL as well. Now, the other things that are going to be key in terms of monitoring and reporting is going to be your dashboards. So we talked earlier about sandboxing. And for the targeted threats, we feel it's better to give more information, right? You want to see exactly what's happened in terms of sandboxed files, how many and which are unsafe for the last 30 days. And you'll see there's 63 for our Mimecast corporate account. You also want to see what's happened in terms of what those attacks are, who are the recipients, importantly. So who's actually being sent these attachments? And if you really want to drill into the detail and a real techie, you can see what are those files, what are their names, and going as far into the logging detail to see actually what did that file do at the point of being sandboxed that we deemed it to be a malicious document. Similarly to the attachment sandboxing dashboard, you've also got the URL. So I'm just going to drill into that. And exactly the same. You're presenting a view for an administrator to be able to view exactly what's going on there. So how many malicious URLs were sent and blocked in the last 30 days? Obviously, that's a really high number, but because it's Mimecast's account, we're obviously doing lots of stuff. You can look at what those URLs, more importantly, you can look at who are the users who are actually clicking on these URLs that are getting blocked. So let me target those users because obviously for them, they find that whole concept of cybercrime or identifying these emails a little confusing. And also, I talked earlier about dynamic user awareness, and I feel this is really a great way to add that into your program to make sure that you're extending that human firewall. But here you can see which users actually clicked a malicious link, got the warning, and then still moved to that link. They were obviously blocked, but these are the ones that identify that incorrectly. Here are their names. I'm going to give them a little tap on the shoulder and welcome them to a room for a bit of a training session. You can get the results, not from the user basis, but you can get the results from a customer service report, which I'll show you, but you can't actually get the individual users exported. What I want to do now is I just want to move to the archiving components. I'm going to move across into one of our kind of test accounts because I don't want to do it on our corporate account for confidential reasons, of course. So this is a test account that we use with a lot of our prospects who just want to go through kind of getting a look and feel for the gateway and the archiving functionality. So hopefully I haven't been logged out. But if I just go in to do an archive search, really the archive search is all about extending what we saw for the end user experience but into the admin console. And it's about obviously searching across that entire environment. So like I said, for us it's key that search experience is near real time, easy to use, self-explanatory, and obviously you can put a lot of criteria in. So you can use words, phrases, you can use your Boolean search terms, you can decide where in the email to search, attachments, body, headers, from and to addresses or domains, date and timestamp as well. I'm just going to do a generic search here of anything that's been sent to this account from this account within the last month. So if I hit search, it's obviously interrogating it, and this is not canned at all, this is a live search, and you'll see we always pride ourselves on those search speeds. Once you get those results, depending on the privileges you have, you can either just say drill down into one of them and have a look at the header information. You could export those emails if you have sufficient privileges or forward them on. But what you can do over and above just archive searches is you can see in the archiving module that there's other stuff like e-discovery cases. So you can group your searches together. We have an e-discovery app where you can actually go and assign a search to review stream. And this will be available shortly, but it gives the e-discovery team the ability to be able to say, look, this is your data. You can go and mark what's relevant, what's not relevant, put comments, etc. But you don't have to be involved from an IT administration point of view because I'm allowing this or allotting this subset of data to you. As I mentioned earlier, you can do things like exporting data. You can create smart tags to give access to someone else to view data or emails that they're not involved in. And all of this is about not just archiving the data in like a flat structure, but saying, what do people want to use that data for? How can I make it useful for people? I speak to a lot of customers who will create a smart tag if they have some kind of independent finance review or accounting company. They may want to review their data, for example. So instead of having to extract that data via PST, putting onto a USB, they provide a guest account via that personal portal. That independent person will log on to their guest account. They assign just that smart tag with no other functionality, and that person can then go onto that smart tag and start looking at the data without having any other access or having to actually send PSTs and data around. So lastly, in terms of the administration console and kind of reviewing what we have there, we also have a reporting module. So for a lot of customers, they want to see what's going on, or they want to report to a decision-making level or a key kind of stakeholders. You know, what are we seeing within Mimecast? What is actually going on? How many emails are getting blocked? So if you just look at the overview, we have this dashboard which shows some of this information, but you can also use a PDF report that can be sent around. So the dashboard can show things like the volume, it shows you rejection overview, so you can see, you know, which are the subsets of rejections. You look at who are the most prominent outbound senders. But if I just show you what that report looks like, we also have this customer service report. And if you kind of scroll through this, you can see exactly what's happening. So for example, of all the emails that were sent to my account, how many actually were delivered being good and how many were rejected based on the fact that they were deemed to be malicious. And the same goes for things like your targeted threats. So if you wanted to look at how many emails were sandboxed, or what were the reasons for rejection? So was it based on an RBL? Was it based on a virus signature? So all that information is available. And a lot of people ask about this because they see after a year of being on Mimecast, they want to make sure that they can validate what the solution is doing for them. I've even gone to the point of customers will take some of this information and put it on their users' workstations as their backdrop. So when users kind of are minimizing stuff, they'll see, look, this is what Mimecast is doing for you guys in terms of blocking emails. So kind of extending what the IT are doing and pushing it out to the end user base. So that's all I wanted to show in terms of the technology from an end user and also the admin controls. So obviously it's kind of high level and keeping it to just bits and pieces that may be relevant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over back to Dave just to kind of talk through some case studies that we have globally, but also in Australia.
Thanks, Ali. And the one thing that I would mention on the reporting, we do have a data logging API that we've released, as well as a Splunk integration. So if folks are using the Splunk SIM, you can go ahead and download that application, instantly get that data in Splunk and be able to use it. Or if you're using another SIM, you can use that data logging API to bring that data in and combine it. So I just want to talk through a couple case studies here about how folks are using Mimecast. The first is a company called the Bay Club. They're based in San Francisco. They have lifestyle clubs. If you're wondering what a lifestyle club, it's a sports club on steroids, if you will. It's got tennis, it's got golf courses, it's got all sorts of amenities. It's a company that's growing very, very quickly. They've jumped from 12 lifestyle clubs to 24. They have about 2,000 email users, and they were making the migration to Office 365 and wanted an archive that could scale very quickly and handle the kind of growth that they're using. So they turned to Mimecast to put an independent archive in to run alongside with Office 365. And that gave administrators the ability to run the kind of e-discovery reports that they need, as well as the employees' ability to call up all the legacy email that they moved up into Mimecast. The next one that I want to talk about is a company, STA Travel. And they have about 2,000 people in 200 branches in 12 different countries. They have about 50 independent franchisees as well. And if you can imagine, STA Travel does a lot of work with customers that are traveling. And if something happens to your flight plans, they need to make sure that they're constantly in communication with their customers and providing the kind of levels of customer service that their customers are used to. One of the things that they had happen is there was a Azure outage that impacted their ability to send and receive email, and they lost some connectivity with their customers. And they turned to Mimecast to have that plan B for email continuity that I talked about earlier, which allows the STA Travel employees to keep sending and receiving email even if the primary mail server is down. The next company that I want to talk about is the Lagan Group. This is a construction company that was using Exchange on-premise and was migrating up into Office 365. And they really wanted to make sure that email communication for them was of paramount importance, and they wanted to make sure that they had security, continuity, and archiving, and used the Mimecast M2A product, which is our most advanced product and combines all of those solutions together. It's 100% SaaS-based again, and really gave them the risk mitigation that they needed in email to make email safer for the Lagan Group. You want to talk through?
Yeah, so UE, obviously you'll be familiar with UE, big insurance company. For them, we met them a couple of years ago. Their requirements were really holistic. They wanted to make sure there was never any downtime, because obviously if their business users need to be able to send out insurance documents, be able to confirm any claims, etc. They also need to make sure data leak prevention was key to them, so ensuring that no credit cards were ever sent out of the organization. They wanted to brand the emails to do a little bit of advertising, but also based on where the individual was located, have a different type of branding. And then also what was key was user productivity. So being able to keep a much smaller footprint in terms of on-premise data, and also obviously future-proofing for Office 365, but making sure that their users could self-serve. So rolling out the Outlook plugin, being able to search their own data, being able to delete emails if they wanted to, but always getting back to those emails in the event that they wanted them. So that's kind of why they went kind of with the whole product that we offer, which is M2A, to provide them with all those various aspects.
So the event organizers asked us to finish with these couple of slides. Just in terms of how you can continue your Ignite learning path, there are 3 options here. I want to make sure everyone's available, that you can visit the Channel 9 to access some Microsoft training and the event recordings as well. We are recording this session. You can also head to the TechNet Eval Center and download trials of the latest Microsoft products, or you can visit the Microsoft Virtual Academy for online training, and that URL is listed there. I'm also told that if you do fill out a session evaluation, obviously the session evaluations are important to both myself and to Allie and to the Ignite conference organizers. Sorry about that. So if you do, you can win a Spark After Dark drone pilot pass. And then I would just finish by saying thank you very much for your attention. And if you need to reach either myself or Allie, I'm dhood@mimecast.com. Allie is aohare@mimecast.com. We're also happy to take a few questions now. We'll stick around for as long as we can. Mimecast is also presenting down on the Conference Expo, and we'll be here for the entire week, so please stop by the booth, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
So no question.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of doing a proof of concept with Mimecast.
Great.
The product is great. How far is your export to BSD? When you do like e-discovery cases and stuff, I've been told that it's coming.
Yeah, so it's currently in beta.
Yeah.
And it's been in beta just, I think there are a couple of things that are going on in terms of finalizing exactly how it's going to work. And part of that is to do with the fact that we have this e-discovery app that's also coming out. So it's making sure that everything that we update as part of the export to PST matches up with the e-discovery app so that they can kind of work in conjunction. So I know for you guys, you can come on as a beta customer, understanding that it's a beta test, but it'll give you the functionality, and there's no particular bug that we're concerned about. It's just a beta kind of match up with the launch of the eDiscovery app.
Any other? Yeah.
So redacting. Yeah, so redacting is, and I hate talking futures, but it's also something on our roadmap as well. And it's something that we've been looking at for a while. It's really difficult to do to make sure that it still complies and all those bits and pieces. But yes, redacting both inbound and outbound is something that we will have. In terms of when, I can't really tell you, but it is actively a project.
No other questions? Yeah.
Can I ask just email alternative, if you have on-premise, what kind of outages do you cover? So if there's an issue on site, how do you deal with email then?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. So if the on-premise server goes down, Mimecast is 100% cloud-based, so your MX records would point to Mimecast. So in the event that there's either an on-prem server incident, maybe you're migrating up and you want to make sure that that continuity is there, or you have some kind of disruption that happens as a surprise disruption, we'll actually send that email directly into an Outlook plugin if you're using that via HTTPS, or we provide the mobile applications or the web-based applications that that email continues to flow.
So if it's a user interacting, say, with a plugin and they're exporting an email, what it's really doing is it's just giving them the option to reinstate it into their mailbox. So there's no logging there because they're working on their personal mailbox. They'll click export. It'll then reinstate it into whatever folder they choose. From an administration console point of view, the two exports that you'll see is there's one that just exports the logs. So whenever you do a search, say, within track and trace and you get a whole lot of results, it'll show you an export button. If you click that, it'll just download those results into either a CVS or an Excel spreadsheet, and that'll be tracked. If you export data, so if you run an archive search and then trigger an export, that is very much logged. It'll go into a separate kind of screen where they'll monitor the export. All of those exports remain there, so you can see exactly who was it exported, when was it done, and that'll then trigger that data to be exported from Mimecast. So yeah, it really depends which of the export. But everything is logged. I think that's the key. And especially if it's exporting data, you also have to have what we call elevated privileges. So a normal administrator wouldn't be able to run an export. It's only someone who has those elevated privileges. Things like forwarding emails, exporting emails, creating delegate mailboxes, viewing of content. Those are all treated as kind of an elevated privilege as opposed to a kind of typical administrator. From an Australia point of view, it's 72,000 is our biggest customer here in APAC, in Australia. They actually have an interesting model where they use our enterprise account model. So you can have, if we have an organization where they share a domain, but they're very separate entities, you can then basically have a kind of umbrella account that passes the traffic and then designates it to the correct account. So in their circumstances, they have most of them on security, some of them with security plus the targeted threats, some of them looking at archiving, and actually two kind of going through a beta with archiving at the moment. But yeah, they don't, as a 72,000 organization, have archiving, although we hope they will. That's the plan. The biggest customer? That's archiving specifically? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Take it offline and I'll do a little research.
And I think because of the architecture, it doesn't matter the size of the customers, so we just kind of grow that grid architecture based on the customer. So if we have 160,000, because it's multi-tenant, a lot of our customers will kind of go in that cloud base, joining other customers. As soon as we hit a certain threshold in terms of the size of customer, we allocate their own kind of hardware space. But in terms of the archiving, it's just basically spread across the grid. So it really doesn't matter if it's 10-seat customer or 160,000-seat customer. It's still just allocated across the grid. But yeah, we can certainly provide you with information exactly about sizes and what they're doing.
Is that infrastructure in Australia?
Yes. Yeah. And it doesn't fail over to anywhere else as well. So it is completely segregated to Australia. Customers can choose where they go, but obviously all Australian customers will typically choose Australia.
Have you got other data centers across the world?
Yeah. So we got UK, US, South Africa, offshore, and Australia.
Reasonably global.
Pretty global.
Good question.
Your proof of delivery that you were demonstrating, showing that you could prove that recipients, entities that have received the email, so forth, is that logging infinite, or do you only keep it for a certain period of time?
So, a really good question. It really depends on what product set you're on. So if you're on security only, it's a 30-day view. If you have a SIEM, obviously you can extend that because you can obviously push that information via API. If you're a archiving customer, it's indefinite because obviously we have a full archive which is storing all the transmission information as well. Anything else?
Great. Thanks so much, everybody.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. And anyone who wants to chat more or have a quick demo or anything else, obviously, as Dave said, just come and see us.